This is why Africa stays poor. The brutal truth about global power. This is Collins Unfiltered, because the truth only works when people understand it. What if I told you Africa is not poor by mistake, but by design? The global economy isn't broken and is working exactly how it was built, to keep the rich getting richer and Africa digging, borrowing and begging. Are we together? In this video, we are unpacking the global power structure that has kept Africa stuck at the bottom. We'll talk about the economic pyramid nobody teaches in schools. We'll also talk about why African countries can be rich in gold, but broke in cash, and how the US dollar quietly controls the world. And finally, we'll also talk about why every single time an African leader tries to break free, they get crushed. This is not conspiracy. It's history, politics, and economics tied together. Are we still together? Good. Let's start. The global economy is like a pyramid with 3 levels of power: the primary, the secondary, and the tertiary production. Let's talk about the primary production. Here we talk about raw materials such as oil, cocoa, copper, coltan, cobalt, and so on. Africa leads here, but is still the least profitable. For example, you have Congo exporting coltan for iPhones, but makes $0 from iPhone sales. And you have Nigeria exporting crude oil, but buys back refined petroleum. Make it make sense. It's like growing mangoes, selling them cheap, and then importing very expensive mango juice at 5 times the price. That is crazy. Are we still together? Let's continue. And then we move to secondary production, which is at the middle. And this is mostly manufacturing. So you have factories and industrial processing at this place. Basically value addition. And here, China is king with, of course, the other Asian tigers. And since joining the World Trade Organization in 2001, China has become the world's factory. About 29 to 30% of global manufacturing now comes from China. They took the sweatshop model, scaled it, and turned it into a superpower leverage. And then we have the tertiary production, which is where you have the services, the finance, and the intellectual property. And the West dominates here. They have the bulk of the banking, the bulk of the software, media, military contracts, and so on. The US economy, for example, is about 80% service-based. They don't mine gold, but they own the companies that set the prices for gold. Africa is stuck, and it's not by accident. You see, after independence, we were supposed to rise, right? Why are we still exporting raw materials and importing everything else? The system was built that way. You see, colonial powers designed African economies for extraction. Infrastructure? Nah, they just built things, railways and airports to move minerals to the coast. They didn't build any factories. The strongest institutions they built were the military and police to keep order and to maintain the peace. What about education? These were designed not to produce inventors or people who were thinking. They were basically designed to produce clerks and assistants. And here's the part they never say out loud. The world economy needs Africa to be poor, because somebody has to do the dirty work. And those who fought back, people like Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso, who nationalized the resources, rejected foreign aid. This guy was killed in 1987. Gaddafi in Libya, who proposed a gold-backed African currency, killed after NATO intervention. This is a pattern. This is not coincidence. Every single time somebody tries to restructure this system, this pyramid, the system reacts, and it reacts violently. Are we together? The dollar. Let's talk about the dollar. You see, the dollar is one of the most potent weapons of this dominance. The dollar's dominance of the global trade, where the US dollar controls about 90% of global trade. Oil is priced in dollars. That means that even Nigeria needs dollars to sell its own oil. Now, this didn't happen by accident. You see, the US traded its manufacturing capacity for national security when it made the dollar the default global currency, allowing the US government to be able to impose economic sanctions on other countries, especially through the US financial banking system. What happens when you disobey or you try to change the system? You have a country like Iran, war and sanctions. You have a country like Venezuela, your assets are frozen. Or Russia, where about 300 billion of your money in reserve are seized. Or you have Gaddafi, when you're killed because you just want to dump the dollar. Now, this is the quiet power nobody sees. If you control the currency, you control global trade. You can simply bankrupt a nation without firing a bullet. You just freeze their bank accounts. Okay, are we still together? Let's continue. And there has been modern day pushbacks and punishments, of course. Let's start with BRICS. That is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And these people are trying to build a new currency to challenge the US global dominance. And the US response? Threats, military and economic. You have 100% tariff, economic war, political sabotage. Let's take South Africa, for example. When South Africa hosted a naval drill with Russia, they got threats from Western diplomats. A very simple rumor that about weapons on a Russian ship nearly crashed the South African economy and their currency. And let's also talk about the Trump obsession with white farmer genocide, which of course is not true. This is also meant to politically destabilize South Africa. Well, what about India? India keeps buying Russian oil. Washington has hinted that they will have sanctions against India. So they call it free trade. But if you trade with the wrong people, you pay. Are we still together? And now, of course, there is a new name on the block. So we have Captain Ibrahim Traoré, a young, bold military leader in Burkina Faso. So the same country as Thomas Sankara. He kicked out the French. He told the French army to leave. He took back control of the gold mines and said, "We don't owe the West anything." Sounds familiar? And that's why they're already calling him a threat. That's why they are saying that he needs to go, that he's been using Burkina Faso's wealth for himself. The system does not forget or forgive rebels. So I know, and they've already stated that they want to take this guy out. So how do we break the chains? Now what? Can Africa climb down from this pyramid? In my opinion, this is what we need. We need to add value. We need to process our own raw materials in Africa, add value and sell directly to the world. We need to trade across borders. Africans need to trade with Africans. We also need technology and intellectual property investment. We need to build companies, not just export cocoa and oil and coal, but we also need Pan-African finance. So imagine a bank owned by Africans for Africans, because begging the IMF won't build our future. Begging the World Bank will do anything for us. And relying on aid is like drinking from a leaking bucket. It will never be enough. And whoever pays the piper dictates the tune. So we need to find solutions, homegrown solutions to our problems. And that's what I believe. And that's what I know to be true. Now, we know that Africa is not poor. We know that Africa is being exploited. And as long as we stay raw materials, we're going to stay broke. But the moment we start thinking like owners and not laborers, that's the moment the game changes. So now I ask you, are we together? Or are we still waiting for permission to rise? Are we still waiting for permission to do the right thing? Are we still waiting for permission from people who do not regard us? We need to solve this problem, and African unity is perhaps the best tool we have to fight this. If this video shook something in you, share it, like it, subscribe, drop a comment. What's the one thing you think is keeping Africa at the bottom? Let's talk. Remember, this is Collins Unfiltered. When we name names, trace power, and push for Africa's future that actually belongs to us. See you next time.